Good morning, afternoon and evening from wherever you are in the world right now, and thanks for joining us for this session. I'm Felicity Baker from the University of Melbourne, and I'm really excited to be co-presenting today with colleagues Rebecca Zarate from Lesley University in the US and Martina de Witte from University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Today, we are going to be sharing a snapshot of the findings that emerged from a scoping review that focuses on therapeutic factors and mechanisms of change. Even though our review covered all the creative arts therapies, today we will be primarily focusing on the music therapy component. But first, I wanted to share with you that this is part of a larger story, which began in September 2019 in Spain, when we held the first meeting of the newly established International Creative Arts Therapies Consortium, which comprises of New York University, Haifa University, University of Melbourne, Edge Hill University, University of Heidelberg, and Drexel University. We met in Spain, we discussed for 2 days what we felt the consortium could look like moving forward. And then after having gotten to know one another, over dinner one night, our first project emerged, which we mapped out on a restaurant napkin, as you can see in this picture. We spent the next 18 months collaborating on this review, which was a really mammoth undertaking. Anyway, now to the study. We know that empirical studies in music therapy have become more common over the past 10 years. And thankfully, the growing body of research is leading to us having better evidence of the effects of music therapy. However, to further develop, particularly within the more medicalized fields of practice, we must undertake more research that is fully powered to detect the differences in effects that we all witness anecdotally all the time. This requires funding, and these days, granting bodies are increasingly expecting that funding bids include evidence of how and why music therapy works, so that they can have confidence that the trial is worth funding. Research that specifically focuses on the how and why, what is now termed as therapeutic factors or mechanisms of change, is beginning to emerge in the field of music therapy. And so the project we're going to share with you today captures what is already known across the creative arts therapies. Our scoping review aims to pinpoint the therapeutic factors, specific joint and common factors, that impact change in response to music therapy programs. So our research is focusing on synthesizing studies that are specifically on change process research. While outcome research focuses on whether or not music therapy leads to change, change process research inquires how or why music therapy leads to change. The importance of studying what unfolds and what is helpful within a session or across several sessions is crucial to advance our field, because it can help to A, identify specific therapeutic factors that can account for the ways in which therapeutic change occurs. B, it can improve the effectiveness of our music therapy interventions. C, it can refine a theory of change that provides a rationale and a structure for our therapeutic interventions. And D, it can develop more effective training and supervision on the effective therapeutic factors that are supported by evidence.
Good day, everybody. Greetings from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I am Martina de Witte, and I will tell you more about the methods of the present study. So, to know what is already studied and reported in previous research in music therapy, as part of CATS, we conducted a scoping review. Scoping reviews are generally used to map the concepts underpinning research and the main types of evidence, and thus differ from systematic reviews. Bids are mainly used to address more specific questions based on particular criteria of interest. Although the search question of scoping reviews are much broader, we still made use of comprehensive and structured search strategies. The aims of our study were to clarify key concepts and definitions of mechanisms of change, as used in literature so far, and to identify all the empirical evidence on therapeutic factors. Furthermore, we found it very important to also map the so-called joint factors across all CATs and to analyze the factors accounting for change in specifically music therapy interventions, the specific factors of music therapy. As you can see on this slide, the initial search included 6 sets of terms related to mechanisms of change, or therapeutic factors, and the different professions of the creative arts therapies, including music therapy. The articles we finally included had to match a couple of criteria. They had to be published as peer-reviewed empirical studies focusing on psychological outcomes, and both quantitative and qualitative designs were included, as well as systematic review and meta-analysis studies. Finally, no restrictions were placed on client populations, so that a wide range of health conditions, gender, culture, context of adversity, and age groups were included. The screening procedure was carried out by at least 2 authors, blindly from each other. And this whole procedure led to a total of 4,591 articles, of which 67 met the final inclusion criteria. The 67 articles showed 3 domains of therapeutic factors: common factors, which are found across all psychotherapies, including CAT, the joint factors of CAT, which are observed across the different professions of CAT, and the specific factors, which are only related to one specific form of CAT, like music therapy. The findings shown in this presentation will mainly focus on the specific factors of music therapy. In total, 24 music therapy articles were included and analyzed. So the next figure shows the several steps of the data analysis of the present study. First, we conducted a search in the most important databases and we selected the articles. And the second and the third step were to code all the studies and the important characteristics of each study. We analyzed which of those characteristics were leading to certain outcomes according to the articles. Lastly, we identified the different types of therapeutic factors, as presented on the previous slide. If you want to read more about this, I kindly refer to our publication, which is open access available. And now I pass the ball to my highly valued colleague, Rebecca Zarate.
Hello everybody, greetings from Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I'm going to be talking about our findings today, and we wanted to just give you a snapshot of our general findings, and those are that we identified 19 domains of creative arts therapies that are therapeutic factors, which we have 3 that are composed of only factors unique to creative arts therapies. Now, why is that important for music therapists to know? So embodiment, body awareness, experiencing the body, concretization, creating something abstract into a tangible form, as well as symbolism and metaphor, using arts as representation for inner feelings that are coming out, right? Movement metaphor, dramatic metaphor, portraying feelings through singing and songwriting, for example. And so what this did was get us closer to answering a question about creative arts therapies interventions and connecting them to our outcomes. And that goes for us in music therapy too. And so I'm going to move us forward into specifically talking about music therapy now. So within the creative arts therapies, each specialization lifted out common factors related to psychotherapy. So they were not mutually exclusive to any of the creative arts therapies, yet they also helped us understand that how we're defining and describing ourselves as a field and using psychological processes and psychotherapy such as integrative therapies, psychodynamic therapies, as well as humanistic therapies that had a strong prevalence in these studies. So for example, factors that have changed such as the here and now, therapeutic alliance, creating a safe enough, predictable environment through the music and through our interventions, feelings of togetherness and bonding, a feeling of altruism, something, you're being a part of something bigger than yourself, meaning making, agency, validating feedback from others, and most importantly, we recognize and we lifted out that client in-session behavior factors of involvement and engagement were represented across all studies. So moving a little bit closer to what we share with creative arts therapies. So again, what we're part of within a discipline helps us get closer to understanding what works and how it works across disciplines. So active engagement, we're an action-oriented field. And so the active engagement was no surprise to us. And it was very exciting that we could actually show it from the empirical evidence that we were analyzing. The creative process is a change factor. Using verbal, symbolic, and non-verbal expressions as modes of communication also lifted out. A big one that we were excited about was artistic agency. So the fact that people were feeling a sense of building skills that was related to psychological and emotional development was also exciting. Deep relaxation. So the physiology of using music in clinical context came out. Intrinsically enjoyable. We have joy in what we do. Music lifts out endorphins. The relational purposes of what we do came out in that particular factor, as well as we can modulate time and space and flow, getting people to move from modulation of one state to another into a sense of flow, and a distraction from stress-inducing thoughts. Most exciting, though, was the specific factors of music therapy. So these are the ones that we were able to say that this is what our field is, and this is how change happens in our field, in our practice. And so the physical act of making music came out. Safe and structuring, like I said, the safe enough structuring nature of music that is used in clinical context within interventions was very obvious when it came out as a factor. Enhances the therapeutic alliance and the group processes. So we have a relationship in the psychotherapy field that we could say that the therapeutic alliance is enhanced. But here, we can also say that the use of music, specifically as a clinical intervention, also enhances the therapeutic alliance. And so this gives us an opportunity to really have a change and an advancement in the way we speak about how it works, and possibly even moving to why it works. And then other concepts and constructs came out as factors: the playfulness in what we do, musical interactions, the shared musical experiences, musical attunement, actually as an ingredient of change, and musical synchronicity, musical dialogue. And then, so this helps us think about, all right, so how are we going to define, how are we going to describe and design our interventions in our practice? When are we going to use musical attunement or musical synchronicity when we improvise with a client for the goal of gaining greater connectedness and interpersonal learning? These are things that we can think about how we apply these findings to our practice. Most importantly, we also lifted out that a factor for change in clinical context is that the music can trigger or activate memories, which together with intervention choices by the music therapist and musical cues facilitate coping and emotional regulation. So again, it's helping us get closer to defining. And so generally speaking, these are the three main areas that we're thinking about how we can move forward. We can shape connections between our own discipline and, let's say, musical attunement and musical synchronicity. We can start thinking about how we separate those or connect those for change purposes. And within the creative arts therapies discipline, we can advance our theory development. And we can also advance our practice and teaching and apply these findings to real world, everyday situations for ourselves. And so with that, I will stop and hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Felicity Baker.